I thought the worst day of my life was losing Grandpa, until I saw him hand the will to her. Stick with me, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The small chapel in our Ohio town was quiet, almost too quiet, except for the soft sniffles and whispered condolences. I sat between Ethan and Marley, my heart heavy with grief, expecting this day to be just about saying goodbye. Grandpa had always been my safe place, the one person who understood me. I imagined walking out of here with a few sentimental things, maybe his old watch or the photo albums he loved. But then the lawyer cleared his throat, and everything shifted. "Clara Ethan Marley," he said, opening the envelope, and "Vanessa Calhoun." I blinked, unsure I'd heard correctly. "Vanessa? Who?" The lawyer read the will slowly, deliberately. My stomach tightened with each word. Vanessa, a woman I had never met, was receiving the bulk of Grandpa's estate, his home, his savings, even the little things I had thought would be mine. My chest ached with disbelief. How could he do this? I looked around. Ethan's face was pale, frozen in shock, and Marley's lips were pressed tight. I felt a cold wash of anger and confusion. And then my eyes caught something strange. The way Vanessa leaned toward the lawyer, whispering something quickly, and the lawyer's subtle nod. Something wasn't right. Grief mixed with suspicion, and I could feel my hands trembling. I wanted to ask questions, to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed still, pretending to mourn while my mind raced. There was more here than anyone realized, I was sure of it. This wasn't just about inheritance. It felt like betrayal had already started quietly, while we were distracted with loss. I left the chapel with a heavy heart, clutching Grandpa's folded handkerchief that I had grabbed from the family pew. My eyes followed Vanessa as she smiled politely at relatives, taking her place as if she belonged. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had planned this, and worse, that someone in my own family had let it happen. The funeral should have been a place for memories and love. Instead, it had become the first scene of a story I wasn't ready to write. One of deception, betrayal, and the fight to reclaim what was rightfully mine. And I knew deep down this was only the beginning. After the funeral, I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa. Something about her didn't sit right with me. I decided to watch quietly, to learn more before saying anything. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but my gut told me she wasn't just a random stranger. Grandpa had mentioned her a few times before he passed. He said she was helpful and kind. But now I remembered how he also seemed to trust her too easily, almost blindly. That trust now felt like a mistake, one that had cost my family dearly. I kept going over our conversations, trying to piece together how someone I'd never met could take so much from us. At home, the tension was thick. Ethan barely spoke about what happened at the funeral. He seemed too afraid to get involved, too passive to defend what was ours. Marley, on the other hand, acted strangely cold, avoiding my eyes and giving short replies whenever I asked about Vanessa. I couldn't tell if they were scared, indifferent, or secretly siding with her. The thought made my chest tighten. Meanwhile, Vanessa was working the room like she had done this 100 times. At family gatherings, she laughed too easily, made jokes, and flattered relatives. Everyone seemed to like her, and yet every smile felt fake to me. I noticed the way she positioned herself near people who had influence, subtly taking the spotlight. Each interaction made me more certain that she wasn't here for friendship. She was here to take over. It wasn't just about material things. It was about our family legacy, the memories and traditions Grandpa had built over decades. Every time I saw Vanessa charm someone, I felt a pang of loss, like something in my chest had been ripped out. I realized this hurt was physical, not just emotional. I started keeping notes, quietly observing Vanessa, remembering every detail Grandpa had shared about her. I wrote down the little things, the suspicious gestures, the lies she might be telling. My grief was now mixed with determination. I couldn't let this betrayal go unnoticed, not when my family's history was at stake. Every smile Vanessa wore reminded me of what we had lost, and every silent glance from Ethan and Marley reminded me that I couldn't do this alone. But I had to start somewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa, and something kept nagging at me. I went through Grandpa's old letters and emails, looking for anything unusual. That's when I found it, a hidden connection between Vanessa and our family lawyer. They had a financial deal before Grandpa even passed, something no one had mentioned. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just bad luck or a mistake, this was planned. I brought it up to Ethan and Marley later that evening. "Did you see this?" I asked, showing them the papers. Ethan shrugged. "I didn't notice anything," he said softly, avoiding my eyes. Marley's face tightened. "Why are you acting like I should have known?" she snapped. The room went quiet for a moment before we started arguing. I couldn't understand how they hadn't seen it. I told them, "This isn't just a small mistake. Vanessa was never supposed to have any of this. And the lawyer, he was working with her behind our backs." Ethan stayed quiet, looking uncomfortable. Marley accused me of jumping to conclusions. Our voices rose, old sibling frustrations spilling out with the betrayal as fuel. After that argument, I felt a mix of frustration and determination. I realized I couldn't rely on anyone else. Ethan's passivity and Marley's coldness meant it was up to me to find the truth. I vowed I would uncover every hidden detail, every secret that Vanessa and the lawyer had kept from us. The anger inside me burned like a fire, pushing me to act. I started piecing together their movements, going through bank statements, old contracts, and any connection Vanessa might have left behind. Everything I found only made her seem more untouchable. She had covered her tracks carefully, smiling in front of family while quietly controlling pieces of Grandpa's estate. It was like she was untouchable, a ghost in our lives who had inserted herself where she didn't belong. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about trust, about my family, and about making sure no one could take advantage of us like this again. Vanessa's control over our inheritance felt suffocating, but it also gave me clarity. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stop until I had uncovered every secret and exposed the betrayal for what it really was. Every move I made from now on would be careful, calculated, and determined to reclaim what was ours. After discovering Vanessa's connection with the lawyer, I knew I had to act carefully. I couldn't confront her directly yet. She was too cunning, too untouchable. So I started small. I quietly went through some of Grandpa's things that Vanessa had taken or claimed as hers. A few old letters, some of his favorite books, and even a set of his pocket watches were hidden in places only she thought were safe. Every item I retrieved felt like a small victory, and I held them close, letting a mix of relief and anger wash over me. It was satisfying, but it also made me furious. How could someone steal from us so openly and lie about it without shame? Vanessa had told the family she had been Grandpa's friend for years, someone he trusted deeply. But the more I looked, the more I realized it was all a lie. She hadn't known him like she claimed. Everything about her story had been carefully crafted to make her seem important, trustworthy, and untouchable. My chest tightened every time I thought about it. She had taken advantage of our grief and our love for Grandpa. I started keeping a detailed record of everything I found. Receipts, letters, the timeline of her lies, and the small things she couldn't hide. Every document, every piece of evidence, was another step toward exposing her. I made lists, wrote down every suspicious detail, and even took photos of the items she had claimed as her own. It felt like building a secret arsenal. At the same time, reclaiming these small pieces of Grandpa's life gave me strength. Each time I held something that truly belonged to him, I felt a little closer to him and a little stronger in my own resolve. The anger that had been simmering inside me was turning into focus and determination. I realized revenge wasn't just about exposing Vanessa. It was about restoring what was ours and proving to my family that I wouldn't let this betrayal slide. I was learning patience, observation, and planning. Each small victory reminded me that even someone who seemed untouchable could be challenged, and that I had the power to fight back without losing myself. By the end of the week, I had a growing pile of reclaimed items and a notebook full of evidence. Vanessa's lies were no longer invisible. The seeds of my ultimate revenge were planted, and I felt ready to see them grow. It was only the beginning, but for the first time since the funeral, I felt in control. Things were getting harder at home. Ethan had always been the peacemaker, but now his passivity was helping Vanessa more than anyone else. He started agreeing with her quietly, avoiding arguments, and letting her make decisions about things that were ours. It felt like he was choosing comfort over loyalty, and it cut deeper than I expected. Marley, on the other hand, stayed neutral. She wouldn't take sides, wouldn't defend Grandpa's memory, and wouldn't speak up. Her silence felt heavy, almost like another kind of betrayal. At family gatherings, Vanessa started showing her power openly. She laughed easily with relatives, held conversations like she owned the room, and casually mentioned things about Grandpa's estate as if she had earned them. Every time she spoke, I could feel my anger rising. It wasn't just the things she had taken. It was the way she acted like we didn't matter at all. I realized that the betrayal didn't come only from her. It was also from the people who let it happen, who stood by and watched, and who didn't protect what was ours. That realization hit me harder than anything Vanessa had done. I could feel a change inside me. The sadness I had carried after Grandpa's death started turning into something else: determination. I wasn't going to let Vanessa get away with this, and I wasn't going to let my family's inaction ruin everything Grandpa had built. I began thinking more strategically, watching both Vanessa and my siblings carefully, noting their habits, their weaknesses, and the patterns they followed. It was like a switch flipped. I stopped being just the grieving granddaughter. I became someone who was ready to fight for what was right. Every time Vanessa flaunted her power, it reminded me why I couldn't give up. Every time Ethan avoided conflict, it reminded me that I had to act alone if necessary. Even Marley's neutrality pushed me to be sharper and more careful in my planning. The family divide was clear now. It wasn't just Vanessa against me. It was me against her influence and against the fear and silence of my own family. But instead of discouraging me, it gave me energy. I knew the path ahead would be hard, but for the first time since the funeral, I felt capable. I was ready to turn these small victories into something bigger, to reclaim what was ours, and to show Vanessa and my family that I wasn't someone they could ignore or manipulate. The anger inside me had become my fuel, and I was ready to use it. I knew I couldn't take on Vanessa alone, so I reached out to Luke Harrow, an old family friend who had known Grandpa for years. Luke had always been kind and wise, and I trusted him completely. When I told him everything, he didn't judge or panic. He just listened, then nodded slowly. "You're right to be cautious, Clara," he said. "Vanessa isn't just clever, she's careful. But careful doesn't mean untouchable." Over the next few days, Luke helped me see things I had missed. Vanessa had weaknesses, small cracks in her confidence and stories that didn't line up. He taught me to watch for those moments, to collect proof without alerting her. I realized that if I moved carefully, I could expose her lies, reclaim what Grandpa had left for our family, and show everyone how betrayal had been allowed to flourish. Together, we made a plan. It wasn't simple. It had many steps, each building on the last. First, I would quietly gather evidence of Vanessa's lies and her secret deals. Then, I would confront small points publicly, testing her reactions and watching her lose control in subtle ways. Finally, once I had everything documented, I would expose her fully, reclaiming Grandpa's legacy while teaching my family an important lesson about trust, loyalty, and the cost of ignoring wrongdoing. It wasn't easy to balance my emotions while planning this. I still felt grief from losing Grandpa, anger at Vanessa for taking advantage of us, and disappointment at Ethan and Marley for their passivity. But I couldn't let those feelings control me. I had to stay focused, moral, and careful. Every step of the plan had to be precise. One mistake and Vanessa would slip away again. I started keeping detailed notes, organizing evidence, and observing Vanessa more closely than ever. Every interaction became part of the plan. Every lie she told a thread I could pull. Even when she smiled and charmed the family, I reminded myself that appearances were deceiving. I had to be patient, calculated, and strong. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a sense of purpose beyond grief. The anger inside me was no longer just pain. It was motivation. I was ready to act, ready to reclaim what was ours, and ready to show both Vanessa and my family that betrayal would not go unanswered. This plan was more than revenge. It was justice, carefully measured and unstoppable if I followed it through. The moment had come to put part of my plan into action. I arranged a casual meeting with Vanessa under the pretense of discussing a minor issue about Grandpa's belongings. I kept my tone calm, friendly even, hiding the tension bubbling inside me. Every word I said was designed to make her slip, and every gesture I made was calculated. I needed proof, and I needed her to show her true colors. I started asking about Grandpa's trust fund, bringing it up in ways that seemed innocent. Vanessa laughed lightly at first, brushing off the questions. But I stayed persistent, asking more pointed questions, mentioning details she hadn't seen me know. Slowly, I saw it. Her smile faltered, her tone wavered, and she started contradicting herself. My heart raced as I realized she had just revealed a lie about the trust fund. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show her deception and start unraveling her carefully constructed story. After that, things changed. Vanessa became suspicious of me. She watched me more closely, her charm now slightly forced, her casual confidence cracking. I could sense her plotting and second-guessing every interaction. It was the beginning of a cat-and-mouse game, and I felt a strange thrill in the tension. For the first time, she wasn't untouchable. She had to think about me, just as I had thought about her for weeks. Even more surprising was Ethan. I noticed him hesitating, asking questions about Vanessa's actions that he hadn't before. He started mentioning small inconsistencies and moments that didn't make sense. I could see that his loyalty was shifting, slowly opening up to the possibility that Vanessa wasn't as trustworthy as he had believed. It was subtle, but it was a change, and it gave me a small sense of hope that my siblings could see the truth if I pushed carefully. Every day became a careful dance. I had to balance staying calm around Vanessa while continuing to collect evidence and baiting her into mistakes. Each interaction was tense, every smile or casual comment potentially hiding another lie. But the pressure was working. I could see cracks forming, and that gave me confidence. I was no longer just reacting to betrayal. I was controlling the game, setting the rules, and proving that even someone as careful as Vanessa could be forced to show her hand. The stakes were higher than ever, but I was ready for the challenge. I called a private family meeting, insisting that only Ethan, Marley, and Vanessa attend. My hands shook a little, but my voice was steady when I began. I laid out everything I had found. The secret deal between Vanessa and the lawyer, the lies about Grandpa's trust fund, and the small items she had claimed as her own. Every word was measured, every piece of evidence clear and undeniable. Vanessa's smile faltered almost immediately. She tried to interrupt, to charm her way out of it, but I didn't let her. I spoke calmly but firmly, watching her reactions closely. Her eyes darted around the room, and I could see panic beginning to creep in. She tried to reach out to Marley and Ethan, whispering and gesturing, hoping to sway them. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice tight. "I only wanted to help." Ethan hesitated, glancing at her nervously, and Marley's expression softened for a moment, but I stayed focused. "No," I said, my voice rising slightly. "This is exactly what it looks like. You lied, manipulated, and took what wasn't yours. Grandpa trusted you, and you betrayed him. And you counted on all of us ignoring it." The room felt heavy. I could feel the anger and grief I had held inside since the funeral finally pouring out. It wasn't just about the items or the money. It was about trust, family, and respect for Grandpa's life and legacy. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, trying to defend herself, but every lie she told had already been documented. There was no way out. When I finished, the silence was almost deafening. Vanessa's confident, polished facade had completely crumbled. She looked small, vulnerable, and exposed. I had expected this moment to feel triumphant, and it did, but it was also emotional, release and justice wrapped together. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. I think I see now." Marley nodded slowly, her neutrality gone, replaced by the realization of what had happened. I felt a moral victory wash over me, not because I had humiliated Vanessa, but because I had stood up for what was right and defended my family's legacy. The betrayal had been unmasked, and while the damage had been done, at least the truth was clear. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a sense of control, a sense of justice, and a quiet strength I hadn't known I had. Vanessa was exposed, and I had reclaimed the dignity that had been stolen from us. After exposing Vanessa, I finally began reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I went through Grandpa's estate slowly, carefully taking back the heirlooms and items that held memories of him. His old watch, the letters he had written to me, and even the small trinkets he had loved were returned to my possession. Holding them in my hands, I felt a mixture of relief, joy, and a quiet sadness. Each piece reminded me of Grandpa, of the life and trust that had been disrupted, and of the fight it took to restore it. Family gatherings became tense as I started putting things back where they belonged. Marley watched quietly, her eyes softening, a hint of regret in her expression. She realized that staying neutral and distant had cost her a chance to support me, and maybe even honor Grandpa properly. I could see her thinking about the choices she had made and the moments she had avoided. Ethan, on the other hand, remained conflicted. He wasn't as openly regretful as Marley. I could tell he was struggling between loyalty, fear, and guilt. His hesitation reminded me that not all family bonds could heal immediately, even after the truth came out. As I arranged the estate, placing each item in its proper place, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal had changed me. I realized that my trust could no longer be given lightly, and that I had the strength to stand up for what was mine, even when it felt impossible. The anger, grief, and determination I had felt during the past weeks had reshaped who I was, more cautious, more aware, but also stronger and more confident. Revenge had been achieved, but it came at a cost. The family relationships I once took for granted were now fragile, marked by what had happened and the choices we had all made. I couldn't ignore the tension, the hurt, and the distance that remained between us. It was bittersweet, but I knew reclaiming Grandpa's estate and emotional heirlooms was not just about objects. It was about restoring a piece of our family's history and my own identity. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of completion. The fight had ended, the betrayal had been exposed, and I had reclaimed what was mine. But I also knew that moving forward, I had to protect myself, be careful about whom I trusted, and carry the lessons of this experience with me. The victory was mine, but the family I had once known had changed forever. I walked slowly up the small path to Grandpa's grave, the morning sunlight soft on the cemetery. In my arms, I held the heirlooms I had worked so hard to reclaim. His old watch, the letters he had written to me, and the little trinkets that reminded me of the stories he used to tell. Each item felt heavy with memory, but also with the satisfaction of justice served. I knelt down and placed them gently by his headstone, imagining him smiling, proud that I had fought to honor him. The air was quiet, and for a moment, it felt like the world had paused. I thought about the weeks that had passed, the lies, the manipulations, the betrayal, and the long path I had taken to reclaim what was ours. Vanessa was gone from our lives now, her lies exposed, her influence broken. The revenge I had worked for, planned so carefully, was complete. I should have felt only relief, but instead, there was a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Satisfaction, grief, and a lingering sadness. Family wasn't the same. The scars remained. Marley's quiet regret and Ethan's ongoing hesitation reminded me that even though the betrayal had been revealed, it had changed us all. Trust was fragile now, and some parts of our relationships would never be the same. That hurt, I realized, was part of the price I had paid to reclaim what was mine. I had won against Vanessa, but the cost had been more than I had imagined. Still, I felt something else, something stronger. I had grown through this experience. I had faced grief and anger, and I had learned how to balance them with patience and careful thinking. I had learned how to stand up for myself, to fight for what I knew was right, and to trust my instincts. That resilience, that sense of strength, was something no one could take from me. I stayed by Grandpa's grave a little longer, looking at the flowers, the names carved into the stone, and the small items I had returned. My heart felt full and heavy at the same time. I knew life would move on, that challenges would come, and that I would have to protect myself in ways I hadn't before. But I was ready. I stood up slowly, brushing my hands on my pants, and looked ahead. The future was uncertain, but I felt prepared, wary yet empowered. The betrayal had shaped me, but it had also made me stronger, and I was ready to face whatever came next. If you ever face family betrayal, take careful steps. Observe, document, and protect your rights. Learning to act calmly and gather evidence can help you reclaim what's yours without causing unnecessary harm. Stand up for yourself, understand your legal and emotional options, and let lessons from experience guide your future choices.